to introduce myself, as you know, I'm Jack Cooper. I'm Commercial Director of RT7Digital, one of the founding members of the agency. We've been helping brands now for 6 years on Amazon as an agency, but our experience stems back over 10 years with our own brands. We've exited a brand. We still have another brand that falls under our umbrella, which is a bamboo toilet paper brand. So have our fingers in a number of pies, but definitely see there's an opportunity to help those with Amazon, and also looking at the gardening space is certainly a category with lots of volume, demand, and opportunity, because there seems to be quite a lack of understanding of digital within the industry. So I'm keen to help educate and learn along the way. I'm going to share my screen and run through the slides that we put together. Vicky, is that pulling through okay? Cool. Lovely. So agenda-wise, just some top-line stats we're going to run through. The importance of brand registry, trademark ownership, which, you know, I'm sure everyone attending here will have their brand trademarked in the UK and other regions, but the importance of that from Amazon's perspective is really key, and I'll be able to outline, you know, what brand registry gives you and the functionality and importance of that. Also looking at seller central and vendor central benefits, pros and cons of each. We're big advocates of hybrid, utilizing both in conjunction as well, and can definitely touch on that. And then also looking at some of the content features and functionality. And then finally, any questions. I'll try and keep this to half an hour. Quite a lot of slides, but I should be able to jump through some of them quite quickly. So we're looking here, just a top line stat. There's as a market, 5.6 billion is an estimate of the gardening market in the UK. Also taking into account seasonality, I think one key message just to land really early on is, you know, if you're wanting to discuss Amazon as a channel, either you're already on there, haven't really given it much attention, and you know, there's going to be a huge amount of seasonality to consider. Now is the time to start thinking about it and getting those conversations in place to prepare you for, you know, spring next year. So I think a good time for us to be having this and getting the cogs turning, hopefully. I wanted to also put in some data here about this is sales data, not real. You know, it's i.e. it's estimated, but this is a tool that we use and we test against real data. So I think we can take it to be quite accurate when it comes to top line revenue performance, and also gives you an idea about the sort of volumes moving through different brands on Amazon. This is in the UK, so as you can see here, looking through the lines, you've got a monthly revenue estimate across, you know, Kita, as you know, brand I believe is also a GIMA member. Spear and Jackson, I think, actually signed up to the call today, so gives you some insight that there's certainly volumes. And one thing I wanted to pull your attention to is the Amazon in stock rate. If you see how low that can be, that percentage, you know, there's I think we're finding a lot of success with our clients currently is really supporting with inventory forecasting, especially when you're so reliant on a key period and there's such a seasonal element to many lines. It's having that knowledge and data-driven approach to forecasting can be a real value add, and it's an area where a lot of our clients fall short. We're currently working with 80 different brands across many verticals, and some of which are very seasonally affected. I mean, Q4 tends to be a key period for a lot of our clients as well. So it's a process we know well, and running out of stock on Amazon is the worst thing you can do for ranking and performance. Just to give you some examples here. So this is when I search for Kita. This is the brand presence you can see, and the brand store. It's clear that they have invested in their brand on Amazon, either through a third party or they've done that themselves or with an agency. I'm not sure, as I haven't spoken to them directly, but as you can see, this is a brand store within Amazon. I'll be coming to this a little bit later about the importance of that and how that can be utilized, but just to give a bit of a picture of you know, some of the familiar views you might see on Amazon, as I'm sure everyone shops on the channel. Also then going into trademarks. So as I mentioned, trademarks very, very important, and the reason being for Amazon brand registry. So Amazon Brand Registry is a process that you enroll in, and I suggest if you haven't already and you have an Amazon account, that you get onto that as soon as possible. You would need the criteria for that. You would need to have if your brand name is in your logo, then an image mark can sometimes be sufficient. But if your logo is just like a picture, like I don't know, it could be say a polar bear, for instance, but doesn't have your brand name in it, then you'd need to have a word mark as well. But when you submit that to Amazon for Brand Registry and get that approved, it unlocks a lot of features within the channel that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. And we're also seeing as well that we're moving in towards next year. Content optimization and updates has been a real challenge. So ensuring content that you submit into your account actually shows on the listing. And Amazon are going to be, we've heard from some reliable sources that Amazon are going to be giving more priority now to brand registry holders. Whereas I know that brand registry hasn't always been 100% successful for ensuring that you own the content of the listing, but it's moving towards that direction because Amazon wants brands to own their content and own the brand experience. So Amazon Brand Registry is more important than it ever has been at the moment. Okay, cool. Just moving in here. So sellers and vendors. Two ways you can sell on Amazon. One is via Seller Central, one is via Vendor Central. To summarize, Seller Central is third-party selling, FBA you would have heard of, very accessible, lots of resellers. You can sign up to a Seller Central account tomorrow if you wanted to and didn't have one. And the model is you sell on Amazon and they take a percentage of your revenue depending on which category you're in. It's normally around 15%. And then Vendor Central is the first-party selling option. So that's an invite-only program. Where Amazon used to be a lot more aggressive trying to onboard vendors, but it's more of a B2B relationship where you sell to Amazon at a fixed rate and then they sell on the platform on your behalf. But a really key thing to note is all of the majority actually of service offering that an agency like us would have, or you would need tasks to do, are applicable across both platforms. There's a common misconception that with vendor, you just sell to Amazon and then you can just leave them to do the rest, and i.e. your content, your advertising, and that's just not the case. It's not like a normal business relationship where they do the legwork. Actually, you still need to do just as much managing of the relationship on vendor as you would with seller. So this is something I come across very often is I see one account manager in an internal team that has 10 accounts, Amazon being one of them, and it's just unrealistic because Amazon, you need an internal team just to manage that itself, let alone one person where it's one of their 10 accounts. So something I come across very often and always keen to explore further. So identifying vendors, how do you know from a listing if there is a vendor selling? You need to look here. So as you can see, this area, hope you can see my mouse. If not, underneath the buy now button, you can see where it says dispatches from Amazon and sold by Energia. That's his team. So Energia team. So that here is Seller Central. So when you can see the name of the seller, it's Seller Central. If it said dispatched from Amazon and sold by Amazon, that would mean that it's vendor. So it's a really important way to establish, is there an existing vendor? Maybe you're supplying like a distributor that has a vendor account. It's quite important to get an idea of if you have a lot of resellers on Amazon, whether it's Amazon selling or it's sellers selling, to get a reseller mapping, because that will really inform, if you want to, how you take ownership of the channel. And then you can click through and go to the list of sellers, and you can see here, this shows all of the different sellers on a listing. So before I sort of worked in this space, I shopped on Amazon before I started RT7. I didn't actually realize the extent to which you'd have multiple different sellers all competing for what is called the buy box. So you actually can only, by Amazon's policy, have one listing for one product. So your SKU matches your EAN code, which matches your ASIN, which is your listing. So anyone that lists that product should, unless they're breaking Amazon's policy, be on that listing as well. So that's why you can have multiple resellers on a single listing. And I'll just move through that. So looking at Vendor Central then, what are advantages? I think I have a suspicion there's a bias in the algorithm to vendors. I mean, I wouldn't ever be able to prove that, but if you look at best-selling products on Amazon, all of them tend to be dispatched from and sold by Amazon, meaning that they're vendor central. And aside from that as well, there's definitely an increased trust amongst customers when they're buying from Amazon directly. As you know, as a shopper on Amazon, the sort of customer service that you get from Amazon is incredible. But actually, as a customer, it's great, but as a seller, it's awful, which is why we have an agency. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any clients if it was easy to sell on Amazon. Also, A+ content. This is a continuously changing area of the listing, which is actually the rich enhanced area. I'll show an example a bit later of what A+ content looks like, but this is an area that is only available if you have brand registry. So just to highlight, brand registry will give you a brand store, it'll give you A+ content, it'll give you further advertising features. You're not going to have any of these without brand registry and without enrolling in that process. And then some other advantages. Vendor Central, if set up correctly, should be more profitable than Seller Central. I'm caveating that with if set up correctly. It is a case by case to see what terms you have, what has been agreed to with the vendor manager in the onboarding phase. But we are able to explore that and troubleshoot that to establish, maybe there's some areas that you should negotiate on or isn't considered to be standard for most vendor accounts we review. But the key point there is that it should be more profitable when you factor in single unit order fees, all of the fees associated with Seller Central. They really do amount and add up. So vendors should be more profitable. Also looking at inventory management, Amazon orders from you. Yes, that also presents some challenges, which I'll come to a bit later, but you don't need to actively manage the inventory in Amazon's warehouse. As a sort of general rule, it's larger shipping quantities. It's more of a business relationship. You're dealing in pallets, not, cases. So I think can be a benefit there depending on how your warehouse is structured. And also Amazon's the seller, not you. So they deal with the customer service element. And I think that there's additional workload that comes with that on Seller Central. So Vendor Central, you get that benefit. And you don't need to manage all of the returns management as well. So a few points there. It can, if managed correctly, it can be a less of a workload than Seller Central for sure. Now, just to look at disadvantages, and I come across this a lot. When you sell to Amazon, you lose control of price completely, whatever they might tell you in the initial talks, and you can give them recommended RRPs, till the cows come home, but they're gonna price whatever they want to, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I think that is probably the most common pushback I receive around vendor. We've got ways to explore and navigate that about how you can try to control the relationship a bit more closely. But if you're very sensitive to RRPs and discounting, and if Amazon's selling lower price and it's going to damage relationships, then it's something to consider and definitely have a conversation about before you jump into bed with them. And just I think, sorry, what's going on there? Okay, cool. So that covers that piece. And then we're looking at Seller Central. So some advantages of Seller Central to counteract Vendor Central. Seller Central, you get to control your price point. So the price your product's being sold at, the RRP. And I think that can be a real benefit. But actually using vendor and seller in conjunction with one another, you can have both accounts. And I'm not going to go into that. Maybe we need to have a separate webinar for benefits of a hybrid, which we can do. But having them in conjunction is definitely the way to best serve you. And you may not be equipped for direct to consumer fulfillment. It may be too much of a pivot at this stage. So vendor could be an easier step forward. Also looking at fulfillment as well. When you're on Seller Central, you can fulfill your product in 2 ways. Well, actually 3 ways. So when on Seller Central, you can either ship your stock to Amazon and then use their fulfillment center, which is called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. You can also use your own warehouse and fulfill those orders direct. The one downside of that is you don't get the Prime badge So, 60% of Amazon shoppers are on Prime. So if you're offering products without the Prime badge, that can be a real downside. Because you're just not, I do it when I search for something, I filter by Prime results. So I think that can be a real challenge in terms of growing the account if you're doing that. And then also the customer side as well. You get more access to your customers. If you're fulfilling it yourself through Seller Central, you actually get some more data than you get. Like you'd have data on where your customers are located, even data. I think you can actually get email addresses sometimes, but don't quote me on that. I'd need to find out 100%. And then you get further analytics. So as with vendor, you don't have any real customer relationship. With Seller Central, you can use tools to help build your reviews, like Feedback Express, which provide information about the product, follow-up emails asking for reviews, all integrated. That's only available if you're on Seller Central, and you get further brand analytics as well. So it can be beneficial with Seller because you get more data and more understanding of your shopper. It's still reasonably limited, nothing like you get through your own website, but still something to be aware of. Now, if you look at a listing and it's the A+ content, which is the rich enhanced area of content that comes below the bullet points, and it says product description rather than from the manufacturer, that's how you know that a Seller Central account built that. So it's a good way to know whether it's been vendor driven or seller driven. This can be useful if you're trying to establish your reseller environment. And also it can be useful to understand if you're trying to overwrite the content. It's a lot harder to overwrite content that was developed by a vendor account than by a seller account. So useful to know that. Also expansion can be a lot more straightforward through seller. I mean, if you are on vendor and you want to expand across the EU, you need to open up your account to EU regions. You need to then get Amazon to order stock, inventory. There's challenges that come with that. Whereas with Seller Central, I mean, it's changed quite a lot since Brexit. But you need to run the EU. So you need to basically run the EU from one country. So you'd like run it from Germany, for instance. You have to be VAT registered in every country in the EU you want to warehouse stock in through Amazon. And then you can run it as a single market in the way that you can ship stock to Amazon Germany, and they will move the stock into around the EU. As it used to be prior, you used to be able to run it like that from the UK, but it's changed now since Brexit. So just to make you aware of that, not going to go into that in too much detail, but happy to have a conversation around what that looks like. But the VAT registration is a common thing that I hear brands don't know about, but you do need to be VAT registered in every country, regardless of the amount of revenue that you want to warehouse stock in, and that's an Amazon policy at the moment. Some of the disadvantages of a seller is, the inventory management side. You are fully responsible for keeping stock against the listing. As I mentioned, running out of stock on Amazon is the worst thing you can do for ranking and performance. So really important to be aware of that and have processes in place to accurately manage stock. And then the customer service, I think this is another key one. You have a 24/7 monitoring of buyer messages. So buyer messages is any shoppers on Amazon that want to message you to find out about your product, ask you questions. It could be anything. As soon as you receive that message, and this runs through the weekend, you have 24 hours to respond. If you don't respond after 24 hours, then it penalizes your account and can cause a lot of issues, even get you deactivated if you manage this poorly. So it's really important that the customer service is managed correctly. There's some tricks you can do, like set an out of office responder that says, oh, we don't reply on weekends, which stops the clock. But say you sent that and then they replied like, oh, how come you don't reply on Saturdays? It starts the clock again, and then your out of office isn't going to resend. So that sort of thing needs to be monitored. If you are running Seller Central account, you need to have someone at least once on a Saturday and once on a Sunday checking this inbox. I mean, it is a service that we offer, but just to make you aware, I mean, most of our clients have customer service teams in-house, so you can plug into that. But Amazon are very tight on this and very strict. And the fees can be really high on Seller Central, especially. I mean, it's very difficult to make any profit on an item under £10 RRP, just as a general rule, depending obviously on size and weight. But can be a real challenge, profitability being squeezed on all sides. So this is definitely something that we're constantly trying to help our clients with. All right, just to look here, so over 200 million new product listings in the last 12 months. Continuously new product listings being created, and whilst Amazon's revenues have slowed down, they're still growing consistently. I just think it's realigning after this quite unusual time that we've gone through over the last few years, and we're seeing that across the board, especially in your category. Also looking here, so these are the key areas for optimization. You've got your titles, your bullet points, images, your back-end keywords. So looking at product titles, you have, this is my recommended structure. You've got to lead with the brand name, give the product variant, and then any keywords. You get 200 characters for your titles. So use that space. You know, we see these are the most highly indexed area of Amazon. So Amazon algorithm looking at the listings to see where to rank your products. It's really important that you have the important keywords and information in the product title. And also Amazon listings rank on Google as well. So if you're investing in your Amazon channel, it's going to help you with Google. We even have some clients that they drive all of the traffic from their website to Amazon as the purchase. So they use their own website just as a shop front, but Amazon is the checkout. And, you know, I think who doesn't have an Amazon account, right? So it's quite easy to plug that in, and Amazon actually gives you an affiliate kickback when you do that. So it makes it more profitable as well, because I think you get 7 or 8% kickback from Amazon by sending traffic directly to the channel. So something to explore, especially if you don't have a strong D2C in place currently. And then bullet points. So our best practice is to lead with caps at the start. I think you can get very lost in the text on bullet points, but it's important to have, I mean, a lot of shoppers won't read them, but from a ranking perspective, it's really important. So make sure you've got your bullet points built out, you're using the space available, you have your keyword density in there, you know, the targeting, even if it's not for conversion, it's for ranking and performance. And if you lead with caps, it gives a bit of insight into what you're going to be describing in the latest statement. I see this all the time as well. Images, like the amount of listings I look at that images are not zoomable, they're formatted incorrectly. Amazon will be marking you down massively for ranking on this. They need to be 1,000 by 1,000 minimum, I believe, and you just need to, they need to, when you put the cursor over image, it should be zoomable, especially if you've got infographics like highlighting USPs. It's really, really important. You know, these sort of things I see often overlooked, and they have a sizable impact on how your listing performs. So as I mentioned, the initial photo needs to be 85% of the image on a white background of the product alone. It can't be the product packaging. And whilst you might get away with not doing this, the likelihood is that Amazon will pick it up. So it's best to follow the best practices at the start, because it's going to cause you world of pain further down the line. And in terms of how we normally structure our images for optimization, you've got your first priority image, and then we do the second or third image well, both of those images would be infographics. I mean, there's not a one size fits all approach, but images 2 and 3 normally be an infographic, like with some text overlays highlighting USPs, and then the third image may be sizing, dimensions. You want to be able to make a decision about a product from the images alone. So a lot of shoppers will look at an Amazon listing and decide whether they want it or not from the title, reviews, and images. I know I certainly have in many cases. So make sure the images have all of the information that you want to convey. And high quality image assets, invest in those, have high quality product shots, really important. And the last thing on that is, we often see this as well. When you're uploading your products into Amazon, all of the back-end keywords, and that's all of the features in the back end of the listing, have not been optimized. So there's like, they're left blank, they don't have information. This is a huge impact to your ranking. Amazon looks at this. So really important you review your listings and see that you have completed all of those fields. Leave no stone unturned there. So just a couple of points on the content. You've got Amazon stores. Amazon stores is like a shop within Amazon, links directly to the listing. You can drive paid traffic to the store, use it as a landing page for paid traffic. Here's an example of Van Store. And then A+ content. This is Spear and Jackson. They've invested in developing some A+ content for listing. And this is, as I mentioned, the rich enhanced area of content. Store and A+ content are only available if you have brand registry. And also Seller Central have just in the last couple of months made premium A+ content free of charge. So if you have a Seller Central account and you're not aware of that and you are selling, then jump on that as soon as possible, because it used to cost you like 4 or 5% of your turnover. It was pretty significant. So we don't know how long they're going to be doing that for. So strike while the iron is hot. A+ content actually, so over 50% of shoppers on Amazon are on mobile, and it's really important to think, how does your listing appear on mobile? And also A+ content actually comes above the bullet points often on mobile when you look at the Amazon app. So something to consider, how's that appearing on mobile? It's very easy to just look at things on a desktop because you're on it all day, but most of your customers will be on their mobile when they shop. And that just about it. Was that about half an hour? Not bad. Happy to take any questions. I hope that you found that interesting.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, it's there's a lot, isn't there? You've really got to work the system if you're going to trade with Amazon either way. And clearly you need to have either time or money to invest, I think, in terms of doing it properly. So I'm sure there's quite a few members who've sort of had a go at it and then just thought, oh gosh, I haven't got the time or the inclination to do it. But thank you, that was really interesting. I do have a few questions, but before I launch into mine, does anybody have any specifics that they'd like to ask Jack while we've got him here? No, okay. Well, I'll go into mine then. You've already answered a few of them in terms of pricing. I was going to ask about that, but you've already clarified that, is it a vendor account, you lose control of the pricing pretty much.
Yeah.
So
What you can do is, if you have your vendor and seller account, then there's nothing contractually to mean you have to fulfill a vendor order. So if Amazon's not playing ball and they're discounting one of your lines, I'd recommend you have all of your lines on Seller Central as well. As you've got to obviously be equipped for this, but that way, firstly, Amazon's algorithm, it's the way that they work, is a lot of the pricing is automated. So say you have a listing with a RRP on Seller Central, it will keep Amazon's vendor offering very close to the RRP as well. And also if they start discounting, stop supplying them that line and just sell it through Seller Central until they play ball again. So you can use both accounts to kind of flip-flop and work to your advantage to stop you being at the mercy of Amazon, which is the last thing you want.
Yeah. Gosh. Right, so we just had a question actually. We're going live with an Amazon account very soon. Should we wait until we have all the assets ready first, or go live now and add content over time?
Definitely wait until you have everything ready. The reason is because as soon as a product goes live on Amazon that hasn't been listed before, Amazon will want to determine whether or not that is a product that customers want to buy. So I've seen this so many times where accounts have just, like, I hear the term dipping your toe in, and it just doesn't work like that with Amazon. Because if you list something, say you list your products with some half of the content you wanted on there and you drip feeding it in, they're not really picking up, and they're ranking poorly, and you've got a couple of reviews, and then after 6 to 12 months it's quite stagnant, very difficult to then come in and make that listing perform well. What you want actually is to have a clear plan, a launch playbook in place, whereby you say, okay, this is all the content, it's ready to go live, the stock's going to hit FBA or vendor. At that point, you've got your advertising set up correctly, you've got budget allocated to that, so it fires at that moment, and you can really build that, get the Amazon flywheel working. And this is how you want to launch listings, is really in that way, to make sure that even even better than that, you have other ads running as well. It has to have an accompanying advertising strategy, and you want all of the content to be perfect or as you want it, ready before you go. Otherwise, you'll just regret it further down the line.
Just an all or nothing approach, basically.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be all or nothing. You can maybe do it with a subset of SKUs, but for those subset of SKUs, make sure you're doing it right. I think Amazon has to be ticking every box, especially now. It's not the marketplace it was 5-10 years ago. It's so competitive. And unless you have a brand that everyone knows and is already searching for, then yeah, I'd advise you differently because the demand's there. But if you're trying to emerge and you don't already have the keyword demand there, then definitely follow what I just said.
Thank you. I've had another question, and it's with regards to chargebacks. In vendor, you can incur chargebacks for a whole feast of reasons. Is there a similar risk of getting chargebacks on a seller account?
Well, if you're using FBA, then you can incur issues with like prep and labeling challenges, or if you're shipping things incorrectly. So there can be definitely issues of such nature. But with chargebacks, we tend to find, so we have a service where we actually identify chargeback reasons and work with our clients to mitigate against those. You can only go back 30 days to recover chargebacks on vendor. But it's more about preventing them moving forward. But the short answer to the question is yeah, you can. There is a similar risk as with anything. If the way that you're shipping products into Amazon isn't aligned with how they process them, then it's going to cause challenges.
And we're going to have a whole another webinar on that subject, aren't we? I think on 7th of November we're doing an Amazon Recoveries Masterclass. So so we are going to cover that topic in a couple of months' time. Thank you. You mentioned at the start about brands and having oh no, where is it? Yeah, what if you don't actually have a brand? If you're a sort of business to business B2B business and you don't have a brand, how does that work? Or if you're a small vendor, you don't have a brand, or do you just make one up?
Well, I mean, there's vendor wholesale businesses. So I wouldn't be not necessarily so much vendor, but there's a lot of people that's reselling on Seller Central, other brands, and doing very well as resellers. But if you don't have your own brand, you would need to definitely, I would definitely say develop a brand. Like if you deal with a lot of white label, then it's quite a difficult environment to be in, unless you've got things that are like very low cost products that no one really cares who the brand is. They just want it for a cheap item. And then I've seen some very successful accounts that are just listing generic items, but it's like if you buy like a toilet brush, you don't normally care what brand it is. Some people would, but a lot wouldn't. They just want like a cheap item. So that can sometimes be a way to approach it.
It's a good job you're not talking to the Toilet Brush Manufacturers Association, because I think you've got some arguments with that.
I'm sure I picked that one carefully.
Yeah, but no, I think some people, like you say, probably use it quite successfully, but they're clearing stock, aren't they? And they perhaps don't want the brand on there. So, but yeah, I suppose there's all different scenarios. Just asking the question about a copy of the recording. Yes, you'll definitely get a copy of this webinar recording afterwards. Yeah, the garden industry is obviously very seasonal. Is there anything that can be done on Amazon to help drive sales through the low season, i.e. autumn and winter? And I would like to add to that, actually. I was going to say we are actually coming into sort of autumn, winter now, which is our downtime. Is this the ideal time to sort of be working on Amazon, getting it ready for spring? So
yeah,
a couple of questions into one.
So to answer Thomas's question, Amazon like during this time, I guess it would be looking at your range and thinking of any of these items gifting items, because if you can angle them to be more towards gifting items, then there's definitely opportunity there. Maybe that's creating a bundle of a few different products that would be seen as a gifting item in preparation for I know those that are into gardening and would be more than happy to receive a Christmas gift that would support them then through the rest of the year. So definitely gifting would be something we would look to review, and bundling can be really important part of that to make it seem attractive. There's certain RRP levels that shoppers may want to hit when it comes to a gifting item. So if it's a combination of you may want to you show your how much you care for someone sometimes by how much you spend on them. So if you want to hit those minimum thresholds when it comes to spend, so maybe you're looking at more of those higher ticket items, which is combining a few products, bundling, that sort of thing. We could look to definitely. And aside from that,
sorry, are there specific sort of keywords that you would associate with sort of Christmas and that? So could you go in and amend your sort of your content?
Yeah, you would definitely do. I think you would create new SKUs, like new bundles, which would have a new SKU and a new listing for that specific period, which would give both a discount on what they would be to purchase individually, so there's a benefit there, but also you could like there's how much if you wanted to invest in it, you could even create certain packaging angled around that. But I think gifting could be a good one. Also running promotions, another one to look at, like discounting during that period, common thing you would see, and I'm sure you do on your other channels. There'd be the two ones that immediately spring to mind. Yeah. And just to answer your question as well, Vicky, I would say now is definitely the perfect time to be looking at investing in Amazon if you're wanting to make the most of next year. And the reason I say that is because you've got a 3-month period of developing content, implementing it, looking at assessing the account, however you may be doing that internally or with an agency. And then you want to get those campaigns running in January and February so that they're mature and you've got all of the data and the relevancy score against your advertising, so that when the peak season comes, you're already top of search, top of mind. And it's going to require investment now and not show the best return now, but certainly you would benefit. And I would look at it more long term. So measure success over a 6 to 12-month period, as opposed to it being 3 months.
Thank you. Right, so got one more question before I think we'll close. How do Amazon returns work? We have seen items returned roughly after 6 months which have not sold. These are returned under the reason overstock. Is there anywhere that where there are clear guidelines outlined by Amazon on how the returns policy works?
I can see if I can find something. I'm sure there is something. It's different across vendor and seller, but if he's referring to overstock there, overstock, you can actually get a term in your vendor agreement, which is where they are unable to return stock. I think it's called overstock allowance, but I need to double check. That's something you could get added in. Normally comes, I think it's about 2% of revenue as a term. So there are ways to address that. It's quite a broad question that I'd probably need to either unpack specifically and with the right person in the room, because I'd need to probably get on my Amazon strategist in to speak to that in detail.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, that was really, really interesting, and I'm sure we could go on. There's such a big topic, but we are running a couple more sessions, like we said. Just to finish off, are there any specific packages that you offer brands, or is it very much everything's bespoke that you work with people on? Are there certain services that you offer?
Our recovery service is like a no-win, no-fee service. So we actively go after shortages, chargebacks. And we recover those on behalf of our clients, and that's a vendor focus. When it comes to other services like content advertising, content optimization, account management, it is quite bespoke in the way that we need to assess. We are flexible in our way of working. We sometimes do once-off projects. We sometimes will work for long periods of time. My role really is to identify where can we add value based upon the current state of play, how the account is, how mature it is, and then build an offering that best serves that. Because our clients come in all different shapes and sizes. Some have big marketing teams internally, others a one-man band. So you don't want to pay for work that you can already do yourself. So we can also provide training, and it really needs to start with a discovery call to really identify that.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'll say there's obviously, I think we just scratched the surface, haven't we? There's obviously a lot of information there, and you probably know a lot about a lot of subjects here. So thank you very much for sharing the sort of the basics to start with. just before we finish there, we've discussed a couple there, but we have got a couple more sessions with you booked. So on the 7th of November, like I said, RT7 return with Amazon Recoveries Masterclass. And then on the 5th of December, you're coming back again, and that's to look at special events. So we're looking at sort of our build up towards the gardening season for next year, really.
Cool.
Other than that, we've got another webinar next week from Aspen, and that's to do with Pixel, their sales tool. So that's a sales tool for all seasons. The 19th of October, just for anybody who's on the call who hasn't yet booked for the GIMA Awards, still taking bookings. If you want to come along and have a good night at the GIMA Awards. And then that's all we've got planned for now. We are working on a few other webinars in the background. But yeah, that's it for now. So thank you very much, Jack, again, for your time today. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Like I said, we'll send a recording of this session out afterwards. But thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.